And are there any emerging trends or opportunities that we should watch for as investors or syndicators?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the deal structures that we've been touching on, the subject to stuff, that's been going on for a long time, for a couple years now. It's not slowing down. I'm still seeing quite a bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
What I've been seeing a lot recently is the contract for deeds. So that's a concept where you sign a contract. Again, let's just use me as a buyer, you as a seller. You and I sign a contract, and it's a contract that after I make all the payments, you're going to deed your property to me, right? But until I make those payments, it's still your property technically. Um, I don't like those contracts for the buyer because let's say I make half the payment, I pay you 50% over the next 3 or 4 years, and then I stop making payment. I don't have anything to show for it, right? Versus if I just buy the property and we sell or finance it, or we do a different structure like a lease to own, rent option, whatever, it's a little bit different. You have more rights to the property. So that's a trend that I've been seeing. I've gotten a bunch of those across my desk in the past couple months. I don't know why. Usually we didn't see those in Florida. They're more prevalent in the Midwest, and maybe the Northeast. Pennsylvania and Ohio are two big states with the contract for deed.
This is the Real Estate Vibe Show, and I'm your host, Vinki Loomba. As a real estate investor and a fund manager, I'm always excited to explore the world of real estate opportunities with you and for you. And today I have Bishoy Habib with me. Welcome, Bishoy, to the Real Estate Vibe Show.
Thank you, Vinki. I appreciate you having me on.
I'm super happy to have you here with me today. So a little bit about Bishoy, or I should say Mr. Habib. He's a seasoned real estate business attorney with over 12 years of experience participating in Florida and New York markets, having successfully handled more than 1,000 transactions totaling in 12 billion with B. He is renowned for his negotiation expertise and investor-friendly approach. Mr. Habib specializes in assisting developers, investors, and financial institutions in structuring successful deals. Today, we have a very interesting topic, creative financing strategies for real estate investors. And we're going to be talking or unlocking some of the secrets to successful real estate investing with creative financial strategies that can elevate your deals to the next level. From structuring winning transaction to leveraging innovating funding options, we'll explore how the right strategies and the right attorney can be a game changer. We'll learn from Mr. Habib's actionable insights to maximize our investments and achieve our real estate goals. So let's get started and dig into this subject or today's topic. Can you explain what exactly creative financing means in the context of real estate, and why is it such a game changer? Because people always talk about creative financing.
Yeah. Well, appreciate the intro, by the way. So when we talk about creative financing in real estate, what we're really saying is non-conventional financing. And so when we talk about conventional financing, that means like a bank or a credit union might be lending you money at a very low interest rate, right? But what happened when the interest rates went up in 2021 is that deals that might have made sense before at 3% or 3.5% interest suddenly don't make sense at the current rates of 7 or 7.5%. And when you can't pencil in the deals, typically the deal flow would die down. So creative financing is a way to get deals done despite a high interest rate environment like the one that we're currently in and we've been in for several years now. Creative finance deals are basically ways for everybody to continue doing deals without going to the bank or lender or credit union for money, but figuring out other ways that the deals can get done despite a high interest rate in a traditional sense.
So share with us some common creative financing tools or techniques that you use.
Yes, for sure. So the first and foremost the one that a lot of people understand the easiest is the seller financing.
Mhm.
Seller financing is a method in which, let's say, Vinky, you're selling me your property. Rather than me going and borrowing the money, right? Let's say it's a $500,000 property. Let's say instead of me going to the bank and borrowing $450,000 and putting $50,000 down, you and I agree, and it only works if you own the property outright. And I say, okay, Vinky, I'll give you a down payment, let's call it a 50,000, and then you become my bank, right? So I
Right.
borrow the money from you essentially, meaning I don't pay you the whole amount at closing, but I pay
Mhm.
you that balance of $450,000 over time. The terms of that seller financing are completely negotiable. Um, it can be over the course of a year, you have to pay it back. It can be over the course of 30 years. It can be zero interest. It could be 10% interest. So it's all negotiated between the parties, and that's why having someone like myself in there who knows what the market dictates, who has more leverage, what the parties are trying to accomplish, that really makes a big impact on how we structure and how we negotiate it. So seller financing, also known as owner financing, also known as the owner takes back a note or carries a
Mhm.
note. There's a lot of different lingo for it. But the idea is that the seller basically agrees to take their money back slowly over time, and typically they get a reward for that in the form of interest payments.
Mhm.
That's one form. Um, Another form of creative financing, and this is the one that really we've seen a ton of. I mean, seller financing we've seen a lot of, but the problem with seller financing, as I kind of touched on a minute ago, is you have to own the property outright, or at least you have to have a ton of equity in the property. If you are like the average person and you buy your properties with debt, meaning you get a mortgage on them, you can't do seller financing because somebody has to pay that bank off, right? Or that lender off. And so this is when subject to transactions become really an ideal option for a lot of people, because what a subject to transaction is, it's when you leave the current or existing mortgage on the property in place after the sale. And so typically when you buy a property, when you look at the HUD or the settlement statement or the closing disclosure, but the document with all the numbers at the end of the closing, there's always, if there's a mortgage, there's always going to be a payoff of the mortgage, right? And it's usually a significant amount of money. So
Right.
in this case, we don't pay the mortgage off. We leave it on there. So in other words, the buyer takes the property subject to the existing mortgage. We leave it
I
on
see.
there. It remains as technically a defect on title, right, for the new buyer. So it's an exception on title.
Mhm.
And what happens is you and let's say you're the seller in the same exact scenario, except in this case, you have a mortgage for 450, right? I pay you the $50,000 or whatever we agree on. That's again all subject to negotiation. And then I agree to take over your payments for that loan. So now one of us has to pay that lender every month. Maybe it's you, maybe it's me. Maybe I pay you and you pay them, or maybe I just pay them directly, right? We got to figure that out. But the point is, I take over it. Now, why would I be incentivized to do that? Why would we do this deal? The reason we would do a subject to deal is because you borrowed from the bank in 2021 at a 3% loan. If I were going to
Exactly.
get a loan today, it would be 7.5%. So
Mhm.
why would I go out and borrow at an extra 4.5%? Because that's more than double the interest that I'd be paying if I took over your loan. So it's ideal in a high interest rate environment. And especially we're in a very unique time where the interest rates rose at levels they had never risen before as fast as they had risen, right? So they went from 3 to basically 7 or 8 in like what, 6 months. So very unprecedented times, and the subject to transactions exploded as a result of that.
So this is, what are you talking about, is something called assumable loan, right? So is it like when the first seller, like you were giving the scenario like me being the seller, so do I have to specify when I get the loan that is gonna be kind of assumable condition, like at some point when I wanted to exit, the next buyer, whoever's gonna come in, they have the option to assume the loan or get the new loan? Is this something you can do it at the time of selling?
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because it's a very different concept. And actually a lot of people confuse this. So it's good that we're talking about it. A subject to transaction is completely different than an assumable loan.
Assumable loan, okay.
Assumable loan is very different. Assumable loan is when you got the loan in 2021, Vinky, there's a provision in the loan documents that says this loan is assumable.
Mhm.
Typically, a VA loan, right, a veteran's loan is assumable. Most loans are not assumable nowadays. They used to be in the 80s and 90s, and then they stopped. So nowadays, loans are not typically assumable with a few exceptions. That is a much simpler process, by the way, the assumable loans, because it's legal and it's okay. The lender knows it's a possibility. What we're talking about is not assumable. And here's the big difference. With an
Mhm.
assumable loan, I would then be the borrower that the lender knows about me, right? So the loan is in my name, it transfers out of your name, and you're completely out of the picture. Subject
Right.
to transaction is very different because you're still on the loan. I'm the one that's responsible for it between me and you. But if the bank ever found out, it could be a potential issue. And that's why it's very important to do your subject to transactions in a very careful and methodical way. Have all your agreements tight between the buyer and seller. You know, whether you're a buyer or seller of the property, you have to protect yourself. And that's why it's very important to have an attorney or someone who knows what they're doing prepare all the documents for you. Assumable, very simple. You just sign an assumption. You're assuming the mortgage, not really much else to it once the bank approves you. Subject to is a lot more complicated than that. So, very different things. Assumable would be better if you could get it, but unfortunately, a lot of mortgages don't offer that. And that's
No,
why
for
we
that.
go with the subject to.
So when you're doing the subject to, sorry to confuse it with the assumable before.
No,
Um,
it's okay. It happens all the time. It's a very good question, actually.
Thank you. So when you're doing the subject to transaction, so can you share with us what is involved or how do you analyze certain factors to make sure that this goes successfully?
Yeah, the
Mhm.
subject to transactions are tricky. So I won't get into how to underwrite a deal as a investor too deep in the weeds, but the idea is, look, if I could get this property at, 3% interest, it makes sense. If I could get it at 7, it doesn't. So
Mhm.
then the most common example of subject to transactions is like a seller who bought it during a good interest rate and now they want out. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe they're moving. Maybe they got a change in family. They have more kids and they need more space, or they need a smaller property, or they just can't make the payments. But it's somebody who's a seller who's kind of desperate to get out of their situation, and they don't know how to do it because if they sell the property, there's not enough equity and they're going to lose money. But they are okay kind of having someone take over the mortgage and maybe put a little cash in their pocket as a seller and then move on. And so that's what we've seen a lot of these situations entail. As a buyer, what you're looking for is a property that you can cash flow when you're doing this as an investment. You want to make sure you could cash flow it with all your expenses and your taxes and your insurance. And I'm here in Florida and the insurance is going crazy right now. Taxes are going up. Um, and all your expenses on your property, you want to make sure that you can cash flow it with that 3% interest. So that's typically how you underwrite it. How you
Mhm.
execute it is a little bit more convoluted. And, here in Florida, what I do is I basically create land trusts in order to protect both parties and ensure that um, we are doing everything in our power to not let the bank know. And here's the point with the subject too, and this is the key. If the bank finds out that the property's been transferred to a different owner, they can call the loan due. All right. And what that means is they can say, okay, you owe us $450,000. You sold the property to Bishoy. So Vinky, we're calling the whole $450,000 due. And you got to come up with it in like 30 days, right? So it's not a situation that you want to be in. And that's why it's super important to have everything as tight as possible before before you go into the subject to transaction. So there are risks to both parties.
Interesting. So do you need a legal advice or legal person in your team in order to accomplish these kind of transactions?
You should have somebody who knows what they're talking about. Obviously, an attorney would be the best thing. I Every single subject to transaction I've been involved in, I saved my client a ton of money or heartache or liability or time because there's so many different nuances to the subject to transactions. I mean, just think about this. What other kind of transaction in real estate is where both parties kind of rely on each other so
Mhm.
that either party can kind of ruin it for the other party, right? After closing. So what I mean by that is this: if you're a seller and you sell the property subject to the mortgage, the buyer has to make those payments and the buyer cannot default under the loan, because if they do, the seller is technically on the hook, right? You, Vinky, in my example, you're on the hook because I could ruin your credit. I could do something that makes the bank call the loan due. And if you can't pay it, it's not me as the buyer that's on the hook. I have nothing to do with it. It's you. So they could come after you for a judgment, right? A deficiency judgment is what we call it, if they can't make all their money back on a sale. On the same token, you as the seller can ruin me as the buyer, right? Because if I gave you $50,000 at closing and then you go tell the bank, or you do something that causes the bank to know that we're doing a subject to and they call the loan due, I lose my $50,000 investment, right? Because they're going to take the property back and I have no recourse against that. So the parties have to play nice. And the only way parties play nice is when they have airtight agreements in place, right? Because that's when everybody cooperates. And so that's what I do. I talk through the parties, talk through with the parties what, the pros and cons are, understand the risk, analyze it, and figure out how to advocate for my client and structure the best possible deal. I want to make a win-win situation, but at the same time, I do represent a client. So that client probably is going to have a better success in the negotiation. But the point is, if they were to do this alone, there's all kinds of issues that could come up. If you have an attorney, it's a much smoother process for everybody.
Interesting. So share with me, from your experience, either this strategy, I think there's multiple other strategies that you have under your belt, if you can share or share some light on that too. So share with us one example, that will tell us, some of the biggest legal pitfalls you have seen that your investors have encountered, and, how did you try to help them, or how did you help them navigate through those pitfalls?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I had an example. Since we're talking about the subject to stuff, I had a seller that I was representing, right? Because I represent both buyers and sellers. It just depends on who reaches out to me on the subject to deals. But I had a seller reach out to me and tell me, "Hey, look, the buyer is not, um, they're not paying me. How do I get my money back? Right? How do I get my property back?"
Mhm,
And initially, they thought they were going to have to foreclose, right? But what they found out was the way that I structured it, and I'm here in Florida, it's a foreclosure state. Not every state's like Florida, but Florida, to foreclose on someone is a very long and expensive process. There are still
mhm,
foreclosures on the docket that are from 2011, and
mhm,
it's almost 2025. So you don't want to go through a foreclosure because it's a pain in the what, it's expensive and it's
mhm,
time consuming. So I told them, what you didn't realize, I told my client, what you didn't realize, I structured this in a way that you didn't have to foreclose on the property and you could actually just take back the property through taking a beneficial interest from the buyer, right? And so it's personal property, it's not real property. And so there's no foreclosure process. If
mhm.
what I just said went over your head, that's okay. To the audience, it's not, it's a very nuanced kind of legal concept. But the point I'm trying to make is I probably saved that client, I don't know, a year plus of fighting and a year plus of legal fees that they didn't have to pay because we drew it up in a way that favored them so that they could just recapture the property if the buyer didn't pay. And within 30 days, that's unheard of in Florida. That's how I help my clients. I probably save them tens of thousands of dollars and a year or a year and a half of litigation that they didn't have to go through because we set it up properly.
Interesting. Wow. So let's go back a little bit. Tell me, how did you get started into creative financing? Because you said before the recording, you mentioned that you've been doing this for the last 12 years, right? So take us through that journey, and how did this become your passion?
I got started in real estate when I was a kid. My dad was a real estate investor, and he would drive me around to his properties and, you know, take me to his office. And when I was 15, I negotiated my first commercial lease with the state of Florida as the tenant at my dad's building. So from a young age, I was predisposed to enjoy real estate, understand real estate, and like real estate. And so my path really began at a young age. I always followed in that path. I always liked doing that. So even when I went to law school, the idea was, well, let me get my law degree, but I really like real estate more. And then what happened was the market was so bad in 2012 that I
Mhm.
decided, let me pursue my law degree. And let me go practice as an attorney, I should say, because I'd already
Mhm.
graduated law school. So I got licensed in Florida. I got licensed in New York. I moved to New York, and then I started practicing up there. And I practiced in uh, with the biggest hotel developer in the country. Sorry, in New York, Sam Chang. He built over 80 hotels in New York, and so I learned everything from A to Z about the hotels, right? Or about commercial real estate, I should say. So the acquiring the land to the construction loan, construction to perm. Seeing the whole project, permanent financing, right? And then disposing of the asset, right? Working a ground lease, which we don't really have much here in Florida. The joint venture agreements, the funds that we created. So all that stuff was completely foreign to me, and I learned it in New York. Um, and so, that began my real estate attorney journey. And then once I kind of got the hang of being an attorney, I was like, well, this is pretty fun. I like this. So I started doing that, but I always targeted my practice towards people who I could relate to, which was real estate investors, right? Because I could understand their language. I understood everything they said. It made perfect sense to me, right? And they needed an attorney who could understand them. And a lot of
Mhm.
attorneys, even if they do a little bit of real estate, they don't really get real estate, right? Because they're not in it every day. And so I see this all the time. People send me contracts, and it's like a real estate contract, but it's a really bad one. I say, who put this together? You didn't have an attorney do this. They said, no, yeah, my family law attorney did it. I said, well, that's why they're missing this and that, and it doesn't protect you. So it takes a real estate attorney to understand real estate, right? The same way I would never do a divorce, or I would never do a personal injury case. It's not what I do, but I do real estate. And so um, that was really my journey. So when you ask me about the creative financing stuff, I mean, it's the same way that you get good at anything. People start asking you about it. Years ago, when rates started going up, I had always heard about the subject to stuff, but when the market when the market really changed in 2021, we just started seeing a ton of it. And then we did some of those deals as investors, like me and my business partners. And then I did some of those deals as an attorney. So I've seen all angles. I've represented all angles. And so it's just like anything else in life. It just, it happens, and then you get good at it. And then that just kind of becomes something you do.
Wow, I love it. And then you mentioned that to me before we started the recording that you own a law firm, you have a litigation department, you own a brokerage firm, you're just like all over the spectrum. So how do you manage all that? Because I'm really excited. You're just like kind of at a place where you can do multiple things, in such a short time. And it's just like using your optimal potential, human potential I'm talking about. Because a lot of the
Yeah.
people live in the box, like, oh, I'm doing this. Okay, this is it. I cannot do more than this. But that's not the case for you. So explain and share with us your secret of the success.
I don't know if I have a secret. I work very hard. And believe it or not, I'm actually focusing on just kind of staying in two or three things, because it's okay to do 10 things, but you're not going to do any of them really good. So for me, it's really trying to focus on a couple things that I do best. And I think all the things that I do on a daily basis really tie into real estate. So being an investor, I'm a passive investor. I don't spend too much of my time actively investing, because the deals kind of come to me through my network.
Mhm.
So I do that, and then my business partners as well. The main thing that takes that takes my time these days is the law firm. That probably takes about 60-70% of my time. I started it a year and a half ago, Legacy Legal, here in Tampa Bay. We serve all of Florida. And we're real estate law firm. We have a litigation department, like you mentioned. We focus on working with investors and real estate players. We're a lender. We do a lot of lender representation. We do a lot of commercial real estate transactions. Um, and then the brokerage. So I have a real estate brokerage, as you mentioned, Capstar Real Estate. I'm the co-broker. Um,
Mhm.
and the other broker with me is a top producing agent here in Tampa, my best friend. Been doing it for 7 years. He has. We opened the brokerage last year as well. We got 20 agents working under us. 2023 was not the best year for real estate agents, but we're going to bounce back. We keep adding talent to the team, and it's been a tremendous thing to kind of be on both sides of the coin because I understand everybody's perspective quite a bit. Um, Last year was a crazy year with all the rule changes with NAR, so we've had to navigate those. We've had to stay on top of things. 2023 was a weird year, and we not only survived, we thrived in all the businesses. And so, I mean, 2024. I can't believe I just said 2023, but 2024 was a weird year, and 2025 is, we're primed for a very big year on all fronts. So, uh, it's just working hard and just trying to get it done.
Amazing. Oh my God, I'm like really, really, really amazed to see your trajectory and in such a short time period, 12 years, achieving all that, which is really amazing. And you kept mentioning a few times, that this year was not that great year, 2024. So with today's market dynamics, how have creative financing options evolved? Because I would love to learn about more strategies and wanted to see how it's evolving. And are there any emerging trends or opportunities that we should watch for as investors or syndicators?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the deal structures that we've been touching on, the subject to stuff, that's been going on for a long time, for a couple
Mhm,
years now. It's not slowing down. I'm still seeing quite a bit of it.
mhm,
What I've been seeing a lot recently is the contract for deeds. So that's a concept where you sign a contract. Again, let's just use me as a buyer, you as a seller. You and I sign a contract, and it's a contract that after I make all the payments, you're going to deed your property to me, right? But until I make those payments, it's still your property technically. Um, I don't like those contracts for the buyer because let's say I make half the payment, I pay you 50% over the next 3 or 4 years, and then I stop making payment. I don't have anything to show for it, right? Versus if I just buy the property and we sell or finance it, or we do a different structure like a lease to own, rent option, whatever, it's a little bit different. You have more rights to the property. So that's a trend that I've been seeing. I've gotten a bunch of those across my desk in the past couple months. I don't know why. Usually we didn't see those in Florida. They're more prevalent in the Midwest, and maybe the Northeast. Pennsylvania and Ohio are two big states with the contract for deed. But we've been seeing those lately. So if you're going to do a contract for deed and you're a buyer, please be careful. Please make sure the terms match what is fair and that you don't just lose your equity because you missed a payment one time, right? So those are the things that I look out for. But that's one of those trends that I think I've been seeing quite a bit of in the creative financing world.
Wow, that's really good. Thanks for that information. So I wanted to ask you one question. Like, if somebody's looking to do this deed transaction or looking to do the seller financing transaction, what should an investor look for, either from the legal perspective, from the real estate attorney, to ensure that they're getting the right support, or like making sure that all the things are in place for the transaction to happen in the way it should be?
Yeah, you're saying what should people look
Basically,
for?
what should I look for in a real estate attorney when I'm picking somebody to
Oh,
come
for
on
an
my side?
attorney?
Mhm,
You want to look for somebody who is responsive. You want to look for somebody who has the experience. So when I say experience, unfortunately, like I was kind of touching on a few minutes ago, there are a lot of attorneys who do real estate on the side, but they're not real estate attorneys. So they might get a closing here and there and they take it on. They might do a contract here and there, but they're really, I don't mean to pick on family law attorneys, but I feel like it's a lot of times it's like, you just have like a family law attorney. You're like, hey, I got this contract. Can you draw it up for me? And they do. And they might meet the legal requirements of what a contract has. They might have a purchase price and consideration and, the signatures of the parties and the basic elements of a contract, but does it protect the parties? I, you know, in my experience, not typically, right? So you really want to go with a specialist. You want to go with someone who has experience, and you want to ask that person if, for example, you're doing a subject to transaction. You want to say, if you were interviewing me, say, hey, Bishoy, can you tell me a little bit about your experience doing subject to transactions? How many
mhm,
have you done? What kind of things do you look out for? How do you help your clients? If I were to work with you, how would you help me? right? And you always want, like, as an attorney, really, as any kind of service industry, the main thing you should always want to explain to your client is the value you bring. So if I pay you, right, if I pay my attorney $5,000, what are they doing for that $5,000? Am I getting more value than that? If not, then I'm not going to pay it. It's the same thing with an attorney. It's the same thing with any service industry, right? Or any service. So you always want to make sure that you understand what you're getting, and what they're going to do for you. And I think those are very important questions as well. Ask the attorney about their timelines, right? To be very clear. And just make sure it matches. If you come to a new attorney, you say, I need this document done by tomorrow. Most attorneys aren't going to be able to do that, right? So you just got to, like, be on the same page, ask all your questions up front, and make sure you feel comfortable with them, right? And then, of course, if you have referrals, that's a good thing. Look at their Google reviews. I mean, these are all things that can help point you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's true. I agree on that. I think when you go to the attorney, it has to be your own story. You have to create your own storyline, how you want it to do it when you're structuring the deal or setting up a fund or whatever you're doing, any legal thing that you're trying to do. It's your own story. And then you're getting a legal help to put all the legal boundary around it versus going the other way. Because if you're taking the legal advice first and trying to kind of create something or draft something, it might not be that clear to you, or you might not have 100% clarity what you're getting into. Because I have seen that with multiple people, when it comes to legal, it's like the clarity is not that much, it's not, they're not 100% on the same page. And I've seen that. So in those kind of scenarios, what would you advise, you know? Because if people are not on the same page from the legal aspect, because legal is something like, I would say, a little bit convoluted area, like a little bit complicated area for people to understand 100% fully. So any advice there?
Yeah, I mean, it happens from time to time. I think the most important thing as an attorney is to set the expectation with a client, and the most important thing as a client is to set the expectation with the attorney. And that
Mhm.
could be a timeline, that could be pricing, that could be, what are we reasonably expecting the outcome of this case to be, or this matter to be. So I just got off the phone right before this meeting with you. Uh, with a client who wanted to sue someone for $1.2 million. And he's my client. I've been working with him for 3 years. And I had to
Mhm.
tell him that I understand you think you had $1.2 million in damages, but you're not going to collect $1.2 million because of X, Y, and Z. And we can
Mhm.
fight and we can go through it for 2 or 3 years, using our litigation department at my firm, but you're not going to collect that money because these mitigating factors, right? And then I kind of explained why. Um, I wouldn't even take his money on the litigation side of things unless we were on the same page. And he said, "Okay, Bishop, I understand. We're only probably going to collect 500,000 in damages, right?" And so with that in mind, now we are aligned, right? So now we can
Mhm.
move forward because he and I are on the same page, right? We understand and we're not disconnected. And that's the big thing. You want to be connected with your attorney. Another example is someone sends me some work to do, prepare a contract or a lease. If they need it by tomorrow and I can't do it by tomorrow, and a lot of times I can because I work fast, but if I can't, I got to tell them I can't do this by tomorrow. So if you want this by tomorrow, I'm not the right person. If you can give me until XYZ date, then we're good, right? And I'm not going to take your money. I'm not going to let you retain me until we're squared away on that aspect of it. So those are the things that you need to get in line with your attorney on before you get too deep. And if you ever feel like you're not aligned, just have a conversation with them.
Hmm. Interesting. So let me ask you this question too. So how can we stay informed on all these strategies that you were sharing with us, creative financing or any other strategies in this shifting market conditions?
The best way, you need to subscribe to all the news sources. The creative stuff is really more underground. I don't think there's really big news sources for
Gotcha.
that. But you can give me a follow on Instagram. It's at Attorney Bishoy, attorney spelled out Bishoy. I'm always posting videos and content on there. YouTube, same thing. I'm gonna start making a bunch of YouTube videos talking about everything that investors want to know about. At Attorney Bishoy on there. TikTok, same handle. And then people could get on my mailing list if you want to email me. It's bishoy@levacylegal.com, Levacy legal, legal.com. And you get on our mailing list and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on in the real estate world.
Great. So before we wrap up, are there any final thoughts or key takeaways you would like to leave our listeners with about the creative financing or the importance of legal expertise in real estate since you had both of them?
And the buying opportunities are the best they've been in 15 years. At least where I am in Florida. There has never been a better time to buy in 15 years, in my opinion. And
Mhm.
the inventory is crazy right now. The
That's true.
prices are depressed right now. The real estate market is coming down to reality. And for most of us, that's a great thing. For investors, you should hold, don't sell. And for people looking to get in, this is the time. You need to get in. Don't worry about the interest rates. Those will work themselves out if you have a long-term strategy. But
Mhm.
buying the property low is how you make your money. It is the time to buy. I would not hesitate. I think you need to be opportunistic right now and just keep looking for um, opportunities because this is not going to last long. I think maybe in the next 6 months or so is going to be the best time to buy real estate.
That's true. I agree on that 100%. So share one more golden nugget with my audience. It could be anything on mindset or the way you work, whatever you like to share with us or whatever worked for you.
Yeah, I guess in mindset, I'm a big mindset guy. And one of my favorite quotes is, there's two kinds of pain, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret, right? So for me, that's the most motivational thing because I never want to live with regret. So just be disciplined, work hard, and you'll never wonder what if.
Yeah, I like that too. I like the pain of discipline as well. So this brings us to our why rapid fire round. I'm going to ask you 5 questions. You're going to answer it in one word or one sentence only. Are you ready?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. So what is one of the most important thing that you have learned in your life and how did your life change after learning it?
Ooh, that's a deep question. One of the most important things I learned in my life, and I'll kind of take this in a business aspect, is to leverage other people, other people's time, right? So in other words, you don't have to do everything yourself, and you shouldn't do everything yourself in a business and in life. So you put other people in a position to succeed and let them do what they're best at. You do what you're best at. Don't try to do everything within the business and just delegate. And from there, that's how you grow, right? So you focus as a business owner, and this really is applicable to anybody, real estate, business owners, anybody. Just focus on the thing you're best at. So, as an example, I'm an attorney. Some attorneys are really good at getting the business, but not doing the business. Some attorneys are better at doing the business, but they don't know how to talk to people. Some attorneys
Mhm.
like to get out and talk to everybody, but they don't know how to run a business. So, maybe you get an office manager, right? So, whatever your strength is, there is absolutely something that you can do to maximize it and double down and triple down on that, on your strengths and put smarter people and better people uh, in the positions that you lack and let those people elevate you in your business and your brand. That's a lesson I wish I learned 15 years ago, but I only learned it very recently and it's been life changing. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I like that answer. And then you know how it is, as you get older, you get wiser. I'm with you
Yeah.
100% on
Yep.
that.
Yep. I'm starting to get some grays in my beard. So I know.
That's good. So being resourceful is the best thing that you can do to yourself. So share one good book that you would like to recommend to my audience.
So How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie is an amazing book. Changed my life, actually. So that's another thing that changed my life. It's all about just how to become more of a people person, which at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. I read it earlier this year. Phenomenal book about just exactly what I just talked about a second ago, like maximizing your time, not spending time doing stupid things that are beneath you, and I don't mean beneath you like you're too good. I mean like you have a higher value, right? So, for example, it doesn't make sense for me to be drafting up every time a client comes in the engagement agreement and sending out the invoice. That wouldn't make sense for me, right? So I delegate those simple admin tasks, and that's the better use of my time. And then the third book that I'm currently reading is Alex Hormozy, $100 Million Offer. phenomenal book. I really like it. It's good about basically how to make an offer that you present to the public, make an offer so good that they would feel stupid refusing the offer.
Oh, I like that. Thanks for sharing that. In one word, what does life mean to you?
One word. uh yeah, I don't know. Family is life. I don't know. It's one word is
Oh,
hard. What's life in one word for you, Vinky?
joy,
Joy,
happiness,
joy.
success.
I will tell you. How about legacy? I'm a big
Legacy
legacy
is
guy.
good.
I want to
Yeah,
leave. That's why I named my law firm Legacy, right? I want to leave a legacy. So I
nice.
legacy. Yeah.
I like that. Okay. What is your biggest passion? I think I know this answer for you, but I will like you to say it.
My biggest passion, I am passionate about what I do. I love helping people. I'm passionate about, my family, my wife. We love traveling. I love doing that. And I love playing basketball. And I love playing sports. So those are some of my passions.
If you could turn back in time and talk to your younger self, what would you tell yourself and why?
Buy crypto. Um, buy all the real estate that you could ever touch. But obviously in a more kind of, you know, um, mindset way, I would just say like, just really focus on one or two things and get really good at those things and then try to delegate the rest of the stuff. So all the advice that I've just given in the last 5 minutes, that's what I would tell myself. Don't waste time doing stupid things. Learn how to do something very valuable and become the best at it. One small thing, and then solve people's problems, and then hire a team around you that can do all the other stuff, and then build a company or a brand around that, whatever that is. It could literally be anything. um and just do that. But the delegation and the automation aspect of it, I can't overstate in today's day and age how important that is, and how much further you can get if you entrust people to help you out and you have a team around you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So you already told us how to reach you, but share one more time. How can people reach out to you?
Yeah, never shy to plug my brand. So at Attorney Bishoy on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. I'm gonna start putting out YouTube videos very shortly. I have a bunch in progress right now. And then the website for the law firm is levacylegal.com, Levacy legal, legal .com. And so you can reach me any one of those ways.
Thank you so much, Vishoy. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Real Estate Vibe Show. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with anyone who's looking to elevate their real estate investing game, especially in creative financing. Until next time, stay focused, stay inspired, and keep building your real estate vibe. Thanks again, Vishoy. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Vinky.